I just want to welcome everybody who is joining us live right now. And I also want to welcome those of you who are watching this at a later date. Thank you for being here. We're really excited about our Mental Health Monday initiative. It's really meaningful to us, and we're always really excited to have really amazing guest speakers. But today is really special because our guest speaker is Mama Dawn Nickel. She's my biological mother, but to all of you, we call her Mama Dawn because she's just kind of the mother of She Recovers. She's the founder. I'm the co-founder. She has a PhD. I couldn't tell you in what. She's the smartest woman I know. She's got all sorts of She's done a lot of school. That's what I know. She was always in school when I was growing up. She's a woman in long-term recovery. She's also known as Nan to her amazing granddaughter, and I'm sure one day soon when he can talk, her grandson, Parker, and also Cohen. Does Cohen call you Nan? What does he call it? Yeah. So she's Nan to some, and she's going to be sharing with you a little bit of the story of She Recovers and our intentions and guiding principles today. So thanks for joining us.
So again, thank you everybody. My name is Dawn Nickel and I am one of the founders. My daughter Taryn is the other of She Recovers. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm hosting this presentation from beautiful Victoria, British Columbia. I'm in recovery from all of the things, as we say around here. I entered recovery in 1987 when I was trying to recover from domestic violence and substance use disorder, primarily cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, and any pill that I could get my hand on. Since being in recovery, I've recognized that there's a lot of other things that I need to recover from, starting with childhood trauma. I developed a workaholism thing. Years into my recovery, I've looked at my codependency, my adult child of dysfunctional families issues. Anxiety has been ever present in my life, something I didn't realize until about 9 years ago. And also depression and suicidal ideation. So that's all the kind of things. What I just like to say is, I'm just recovering from life. We're all recovering from something. There's no shame in this game. The She Recovers Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit public charity. We connect, support, and empower women through our virtual platforms and in-person community networks. And if you feel inspired to become a supporter, please visit www.sherecovers.org. We're all recovering from something. We may be in recovery from one or more of the following: substance use disorders, including alcohol use disorder and opioid use disorder; trauma, including intergenerational trauma, racial trauma, religious trauma; codependency; anxiety, depression, and other mental health disorders; eating disorders and other food-related issues; grief and loss, including divorce or job loss; burnout from caregiving or overworking; love or sex addiction; sexual, emotional, or physical abuse; cancer or other illnesses. I'm also in recovery from colon cancer, or any other life issue from which we hope to heal. If you are a woman, cisgender or transgender, or a non-binary individual who identifies with women's communities, and if you are in recovery or seeking recovery, you are welcome here. As we said, as I introduced, we are a global grassroots movement. We have members all across the world. And we number ourselves at around 325,000 to 400,000 women, depending on which platform we're looking at. We have over 270,000 on this platform that we're streaming to now, which is our Facebook page, our public page. We have over 5,000 women in a private Facebook group. We have 30 to 40,000 people following us on Instagram. We have Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. So throughout overall, we kind of count our numbers of followers and community members between 325,000 and 400,000. We are a 501c3 nonprofit charity in the United States, even though Taryn and I live in Victoria, and we are in the process of applying for charitable status in our home country of Canada. So our vision is simple. It's just a world where all women in or seeking recovery are celebrated, supported, and deemed essential to healthy communities. Pretty straightforward. We're all about stamping out the stigma, eradicating it. There's no shame in this game, we say. So If you're here because you are in or seeking recovery, know that you have not arrived here as someone who should be ashamed of that. You should be celebrated for showing up for yourself. Even if you're just curious and inquiring and have no intention of making any commitment whatsoever to recovery, we welcome you here. We're glad that you're here. Our mission is to inspire hope, reduce stigma, and empower women in or seeking recovery for behavioral health issues and other life challenges so that you can increase your recovery capital, heal yourself, and help other women to do the same. We strongly believe that women recover, families recover, then communities recover, and eventually our world will recover. It's a big, big task, but we figure that together we're stronger and we can make it happen. Some of our objectives and the things that we do and talk about what we do is we really want to help increase access to recovery support services. That's including professional and clinical. And how we'll do that it will unfold over the coming months and years. We just attained our charitable status in April of this year, although we have been around. She Recovers has been in existence since June 2011. So next year we'll be celebrating our 10-year anniversary. And we've had a number of different iterations. We were just a passion project and a Facebook page. Then we were a business for a couple of years, and now we are a charity. We want to help women build recovery capital, and that just means exactly what it says, right? We know that with certain supports, you are in a better position to not just to heal, but also to thrive. Public awareness programs and education, including, if some of you have been following us, you'll see that we actually, for the month of September, which is Recovery Month, we have a frame that you can, if you are a person who recovers out loud, and it's okay if you're not, you can put a frame around your profile pic that says, this is what recovery looks like. So we invite you to do that if you are a person who is recovering out loud. Taryn, I must tell you one day what I actually went to school for 13 years. I think that that's a little bit odd that you don't know, but I have a PhD in healthcare policy. I studied women's studies, women's history, and gender and healthcare policy. I focused specifically on end-of-life care in my doctoral dissertation. But of course, as somebody who's been in recovery for many decades, when I left school, I really got into looking at a lot of different policy making and program development, evaluation, et cetera, of mental health and addictions programs. So also an area of expertise for me. And I believe in evidence, right? I believe that we are the evidence. And what we're really trying to do with our foundation is show people that we do recover. Women do recover, and we recover from all the things in all the ways. More about that in a moment when we get to our intentions. Finally, what we want to be the trusted source of information for all women in or seeking recovery. What we've always said about She Recovers is I'm not trying to create, Taryn and I haven't been trying to create or carve out a specific kind of, this is She Recovers and this is what She Recovers does, and go there if you have this or you want to do this. From the beginning of our work, as really change makers and leaders in the women's online recovery movement, what we've always been struck by is all of the great work that's already going on out there. So many of our close friends who we've known from the beginning, we were kind of here when they landed. Some of them were also here when we started. But a few years in, people like Laura McCowan and Holly Whitaker and Annie Gray started to appear on the scene, and we've looked at their work and respected it, and always found that the best way for us all to really help one another is to support and share each other's work. And for She Recovers, we kind of have been developing this idea that we are kind of a clearinghouse or an umbrella over all of the great resources, pathways, patchworks. How we're different, we'll get to again in a moment, but we believe that we are already a trusted source of information for women who are in or seeking recovery. So let's get to the meat of the matter, intentions and guiding principles. This is the big one, right? We're all recovering from something. I already told you a little bit about what I'm in recovery from. I read our list that we read at the beginning of every gathering so that women can come here and identify. And I guess where we're quite different than some of the other spaces that I've mentioned and that you'll be familiar with out there is that our focus is not specifically on alcohol use disorder. It's really on all of the things. And the reason for that is, and even the women, people who are doing work with alcohol use disorder recognize that drinking, if that's your thing, or smoking pot, or doing any other drug, or being in love with real people who you shouldn't be in love with, or working too much or shopping too much, spending too much money, all of the behaviors or substances that you might engage with in order to numb what is really going on for you. They're just symptoms of what is actually needing to be healed. And so our intention and guiding principle that we're all recovering from something invites people to come in, women to come into our community, and maybe they don't want to identify as being a person with a substance use disorder. And so you don't have to. You can attend our gatherings. You don't even have to speak at our gatherings. You don't have to have your video on. You can come to our retreats or our conferences. You don't have to tell us what you're in recovery from at all if you don't want to. You know, there are a great many women who have been on retreat with us who have disclosed at the beginning of, say, a week-long retreat that they're there because, you know, they have anxiety, or they've been dealing with depression. And as the days go on and they feel a little more comfortable, they might then disclose that how they've been dealing with their anxiety is by overusing prescription drugs or something. And again, it's really up to you to disclose or not disclose what you're in recovery from in our community. We don't judge you. We just invite you to do things at your own pace. We don't use labels in our community, although if you do identify as an alcoholic, then we respect that, and that's fine. Again, you know, it's really, we try to keep things as open and as inclusive as possible. What we recognize, and Taryn is actually the kind of the point person for this in our organization, is that most of us are in recovery from trauma of some sort. And this includes adverse childhood experiences. If you aren't familiar with adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs, as they're called, I do recommend that you have a look at it. So trauma in childhood doesn't need to be that somebody in your family was murdered, or you witnessed or were in an accident. An adverse child experience can simply be something like one of your parents died or one of your siblings passed away. Even divorce is an adverse childhood experience. Somebody being extremely ill in your family. All of these things are counted. And so when we talk about trauma and childhood trauma in particular, there's a wide array of experiences that you may have had that would make you more susceptible to behavioral health issues as you grow older. We don't have to hit rock bottom to pursue recovery in any area of our lives. We believe in early intervention. You know, what we've seen in the women's recovery movement over this past 10 years in particular is that there are a lot of women who are seeking a different way of recovery than perhaps 12-step recovery, as an example, because they're at a different point along the spectrum of their behavior or substance use disorders. So, you know, maybe you've just realized that you have a little bit of a shopping addiction, right? And it hasn't yet devastated your family finances. You're still maintaining, you're still paying your bills, but you have that feeling inside that, oh my gosh, I should not be doing this. I should not be spending money that I could be better spending or saving elsewhere. So you're really at the beginning kind of the spectrum. That's okay. You know, what we know about behavioral health issues and substance use disorders is that we generally don't stay there. We don't stay in that place of maladaptive behavior, right? It generally does get worse as we go on. So we invite people who are just so-called sober curious, or just really investigating, maybe that you have a predisposition towards unhealthy relationships and you're starting to explore that. And if you come along to our gatherings and hear other women talk about it, you're able to say, okay, I'm not going to take this any further. I'm going to heal this now so that I don't have to end up in that, relationship with a narcissist or somebody abusive. So early intervention for me as a healthcare policy analyst is something that I'm very familiar with. And for those of you who are in healthcare, we always talk about prevention and early intervention. And what we know in the treatment industry, and in particular substance use addiction, love addiction, any of the behavioral health disorders where you can end up in treatment for, is we focus very little on early intervention. We wait until an individual is in crisis and then we address the issue, right? And so it's just a little bit of a surprise to me that we spend so little attention on, in our case, women who are at the earlier end of the spectrum. So we really invite people to come to our community and explore if you're even at that early end. Obviously, we also have women who come along and they're in big trouble with whether it's a love addiction again, or a shopping addiction, a gambling addiction, substance use disorder. And when they come into our community again, it's not we don't assess people and make recommendations, but they can tell from women who are sharing their own experiences that, wow, I'm actually at this point, I'm further along than I thought I was with this disorder, and perhaps I need more help. And, you know, we're very supportive of saying things like get assessed by an addictions counselor or by somebody who deals with love addiction and codependency. Get an assessment and let a professional tell you whether you need to go to treatment or what you need to do, because you're in crisis. You know, it's clear that people identify as being in crisis quite often. And then we're also here for people who, after you've been to treatment, women come out and, you know, need that psychosocial support network. That's what we can offer. I went to treatment twice. You know, the first time was 28 days, and I learned a lot. It was a great educational experience, but I needed to change my life when I got out in order to continue to grow and recover. So we must be supported to find and follow individualized pathways and patchworks of recovery. This is a real pillar of our foundation and of our work and of our philosophy. I myself was, when I got out of treatment in 1987, the first time, in 1989, the second, I was told that I must go to 12-step recovery programs or I would not recover. And you know what? That was true. That was true then. It's not true today. There's so many other ways to recover, but I have nothing but respect for my 12-step program, of which I still consider myself to be a member. But I have recognized over the past 3 decades how it just, 12-step recovery does not work for everybody. And that's okay, because there are other ways to recover now. How I like to view my own involvement with the 12-step recovery program for people who are in recovery from addiction is that it's a part of my practice. So I view recovery as a practice, and using the 12 steps or going to meetings online or in person when we're able to do that is just one piece of my recovery practice. It's not my end all be all as it was for the first, say, 7 years of my recovery, when I absolutely know that it did save my life. I needed that connection with other people who were doing what I needed to be doing, which was figuring out how to live without substances, without being in a dangerous relationship, etc. So I'm actually writing a book about recovery being a practice, and you know, we're extremely passionate about this. My daughter Taryn, when she ended up, oddly enough, addicted at 16, and running away with drug dealers, which was something that I had kind of done myself. When she entered recovery, she tried to go to meetings, and it just didn't work for her. It wasn't what she was all about. So we respected that then, we respect it now. Her pathway is very different. She does all sorts of things. Yoga is one of the main foundations of her recovery. She has done plant medicine, she does essential oils, all sorts of different ritual, meditation, art. You know, she's now becoming an artisan. She makes beautiful jewelry now. And yeah, it's kind of like design your own recovery practice. That is really what we encourage. And for those women who are in 12-step recovery, we love when you share about how it works for you, because I think that, you know, we cannot ever throw away 12-step recovery. I get a little upset when people suggest that we shouldn't be doing 12-step recovery anymore for various reasons. And few people do that, just a few. The fact of the matter is, you can't talk about 12-step recovery without recognizing that there is socioeconomic issue. There's an issue of privilege, right? As a privileged white woman, I might be able to afford to get a therapist, go to yoga, go on a retreat, do all these other wonderful things for my recovery. But when I was a single mom on welfare and I got into recovery, all I could do was go to free 12-step meetings. And so we just really do need to respect. What we say is that, as I said, we support all recovery pathways and criticize none. Doesn't mean we can't critique them and talk about things that 12-step recovery can do better. I wrote a blog and we did a podcast last year, and I wrote it, it was called Dear Women in 12-Step Recovery, where I just invite women in 12-step recovery to think about some of the things, some of the messages that we have, that we kind of put out there in anonymous fellowships and programs, to rethink them. And if you want to read that, it's on our blog. This is Taryn's intention and guiding principle, although of course, obviously I completely relate to it and believe in it, but recovery is a journey to wholeness. We learn to take care of our body, mind, emotions, and spirit. So movement is a big part of our programs. You know, we have yoga, trauma-informed yoga, a beautiful trauma-informed yoga program that Taryn developed. Peyton, one of our, member of our leadership team and a longtime member of the She Recovers group has developed something called She Recovers Dance. So she dances in this time slot every Friday, and on Wednesdays in this time slot, Taryn, or one of her trained She Recovers trauma-informed yoga teachers, does a yoga class. The other days in this time slot, we do a closed She Recovers Zoom gathering, which is in meeting form, not webinar form. We do encourage people to take care of your mind, emotions, and spirit. So again, when you're creating your practice or your patchwork, it's all about looking at things like CBT, DBT, emotionally and spiritually. How are you taking care of your wellness? Do you, if you have a church practice, then I think that that's wonderful. If you have some other spiritual practice, we totally support that and love hearing about it. We really like sharing what's working for other women. It gives us ideas, and it also teaches us to respect how different we all are in this wonderful game called recovery. This is actually a brand new intention and guiding principle, and we've revised our intentions and guiding principles a few times. The first time there was just 5 for a number of years, and then there was 10. And I'll tell you about a change we made to the version previous to this version in a few moments. But this year, when there was so much going on, we'd always thought that we really want to change at least one of our intentions to be much more specific about the role of trauma in recovery and the importance of recognizing the importance of healing our past wounds and intergenerational traumas. So we had an opportunity to change a couple of things this year, and this is one of the ones that we changed. On our retreats and in her yoga classes, including her free classes that are on Wednesdays, Taryn often talks about healing past wounds and intergenerational trauma. She's a bit fixated on intergenerational trauma, which I always like to say is really fun when you're her mother, because she doesn't let those ghosts in my family sleep at all. She's always digging around and trying to figure out, Mom, what made you that way, and what made Nanny that way, and what made her mom that way. So it's really beautiful work, because the other side of digging into what happened in my families of origin and, my mother's family of origin and all the trauma, going back to so many centuries ago, is that we get to celebrate. We get to celebrate this generation. And, Taryn says when we heal, it's not her original thing. She borrows it from somebody else. But when Taryn heals, she heals me too. She heals my mom, my grandmother, and she's healing, the generations that are to come, her children, her nieces and nephews. So it's really a very beautiful concept. And Taryn has just done some amazing work and research and learning. So she brings that to what we're able to provide. Just checking to see if anybody's telling me I should be doing something different. We focus on our strengths, not our defects. This is how we change. You might, if you are in a 12-step program, you might think, well, that's a slap at a 12-step program, but it's not. It's merely an acknowledgement that something that I learned in my own recovery is, in the early years of my recovery, I felt like I was just one big defect. And nobody in 12-step recovery was telling me that. But the work, when somebody said do an inventory, the first thing I did was inventory all the things I'd ever done wrong in my life, all the horrible, hateful things I'd done to others and to myself. And by the time I got to the end of that inquiry, I was so exhausted, I could barely even think of anything I did right. So as somebody who's trained as a recovery coach, although I'm not currently practicing, I will start my practice up again in January, potentially. Coaching is very strengths-based. So it's really, about 10 years ago when I started doing that training, I started really reflecting on how much more powerful it is for me to focus on what I'm doing right and building on that, rather than forever chastising myself and judging myself for doing things wrong or not getting things right. So really feel this very strongly. If you are in our community and you come in and you've got an eating disorder, and we don't proclaim or claim to be experts in eating disorders, but other women who do have eating disorders will help with a woman who says something like, I had 19 days without engaging in my behavior, and then I did something that I shouldn't have done. And, the other women with eating disorders will say, okay, but you had 19 days. That's amazing. Like, what are we going to do today so that you can get on to tomorrow? So that tomorrow you can say, I have 20 out of 21 days of not participating in that behavior. So we do that a lot. We talk about being in recovery and maybe having a recovery date and then a sobriety date, or a recovery date and a net complete abstinent date if you are a woman who is in substance use recovery. This is new. It's not a new intention, but we changed the wording a little bit. It used to read, we understand that the practice of radical self-care is paramount to our well-being, but because we were switching things up, we wanted to be able to be a little more emphatic. And, self-care is just a part of self-love. And, when I got into recovery, if I came into a community where they were talking about self-love, I probably would have wanted to throw up. I was nowhere near ready to even say that phrase, let alone start to try and live that. But it really is what it's about, right? It is what recovering our soul, our lives, our purpose, our being is all about, returning to self-love. So we spend a lot of time talking about that, returning to ourselves. Another new guiding principle, and we're very passionate about this. We do our individual work in order to create and hold healing spaces for everyone. All women deserve recovery. This was born out of, again, we had for years now, about 4 years, we've really been working on trying to increase diversity in our community. And I guess we were going about it all the wrong ways. We thought that if we just thought about diversity, talked about diversity, invited diverse women, that we would, we could claim that we were a diverse community. And with the unconscionable murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, other things that went on this year, we had an opportunity to really start engaging again in some work that most of the people on our team had been doing for a number of years, but really looking at ourselves, looking at white privilege, looking at systemic racism, and really looking at racism in recovery, which is a thing, people. I have to tell you, it's a thing. And so as part of our commitment as an organization and as a new charity in particular, we're working on a number of initiatives that you'll be hearing about over the next couple of weeks. One of our coaches, an amazing coach named Sherry Hampton, you might know her from Served Up Sober. We've been supporting her to work with an anti-racism trainer, and Sherry's coming up with her own anti-racism training, which will be available to treatment centers and other groups and communities in recovery. So we're very excited about that. We have a book club that we started in August, and we looked at 3 different books that relate to race and racism. We're starting a series called Critical Conversations, and the first one will be a critical conversation between Black women talking to each other about being a Black woman in recovery. So again, more of that to come. But the idea here is that in our community, it's important to us, and it's not just about race, right? It's about any other oppressive system that we encourage women in our community to do the work of uncovering, unpacking, dismantling our own belief systems, so that we don't inadvertently or purposefully harm another woman who wants to be in our community. This is September, this is Recovery Month, and we are excited always to be recovering out loud so that women who are struggling can find and join our movement. And this is about, again, you don't have to go and plast a profile frame on your Facebook page and say, I'm in recovery, I haven't drank for 3 days or whatever it is. We don't ask anybody to do that. Recovering out loud can be as simple as one day you might be, and I use this example all the time, on an airplane and somebody's sharing about something that they are struggling with. Those people on the airplanes, I'm one of them, kind of tell you their whole life story. Somebody might say something like, my daughter is addicted to heroin, and it's just been really traumatic. And so if you are a person who also had a child who was addicted to heroin, you have an opportunity to recover out loud to that person one-on-one. Again, anytime that you can, if you're at work and somebody at work, you're in recovery, and so you can see the signs of somebody who's struggling with an addiction, you can recover out loud just by saying to that person, if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here, I have some experience. You don't have to say it's your experience. You can say someone in my family has the experience. I'm happy to share it with you. That type of thing. If you see a woman who is being abused in their relationship, I think it's more than just recovering out loud. Anyone who we believe is being abused, I believe we actually have an ethical obligation to do something about that. But if you have some experience with unhealthy relationships, recovering out loud is just saying, hey, I'm a little concerned about what I've seen, or that this happened, and I'd like to share my experience with you. So again, you don't have to start a blog or start a Facebook page or do any of those things. It's really some of the subtle things that we can do in order to help other women are just as powerful as starting an international grassroots movement. And finally, connection is our soul, and then that cute little soul purpose. We're stronger together. I hope that everything I've described so far gives you the sense that we truly are trying to be as inclusive and welcoming and broad-based and non-judgmental and celebratory of everything. If you are a woman inner seeking recovery from any of the things, you are welcome in our community. So how do we get you? What do we do? How do we support you? Well, you can join us on She Recovers Together online. We have a podcast, so you can find us anywhere you can find podcasts. And there's links and information about all of these offerings on our website, www.sherecovers.org. But daily, we have online Zoom gatherings in this time slot, and then later 5 Pacific and 8 Eastern. And most of the daily gatherings are kind of sharing circles where we share. They are all hosted by professional recovery coaches, so they are professionally hosted. We have amazing co-hosts who are members of our communities who volunteer their time. They're usually topic driven, and they're simply wonderful opportunities for you to check out. Again, you can come and keep your video off. You won't be asked to share. You can drop your name and say hi in the chat if you want on those gatherings. They're just really pretty cool places. And we also have a Facebook group for She Recovers Together. Yoga is both weekly on Wednesdays with Taryn in this time slot, and she has a She Recovers yoga membership, which is free for the first month and then $19.99 a month thereafter. It's got a wonderful library that she's always adding to, all sorts of different themed classes, different lengths of classes, etc. I talked already a little bit about She Recovers Dance with Peyton. That's on Fridays in this time slot. And, Peyton is actually going to be developing that so that eventually we'll be training women to be She Recovers Dance leads as well. And then She Recovers Mental Health Mondays, which is not usually me blabbering on and on. It's usually some other professional or clinician. And we've been doing this since May, when during Mental Health Month, we decided we would do it just for Mental Health Month in May. But these sessions became so popular that we're continuing them on. Our Facebook groups are private. We have one specifically for Black, Indigenous, and women of color. It's a Facebook group and also a Zoom meeting, and they meet once a month on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, which is 2 p.m. Eastern. That is restricted to women who are Black, Indigenous, or women of color. We have a group for She Recovers for healthcare and allied professionals, something we realized was needed when the pandemic kind of started really taking over our lives. So people who are also working in the addiction industry are welcome to join us there, therapists and others. They meet 7:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Eastern on Saturdays. She Recovers Support for Legal Professionals is also, it's currently a Facebook group, but we will be starting a Zoom gathering this fall sometime. And Peyton is a mom of a high need child, and so she started She Recovers Support for Mothers of High Needs Children, which is, again, at this point, it's just a Facebook group with the idea that we will eventually be moving towards having a Zoom gathering for those moms. Coming up this fall as well, or early into the new year, we're going to be launching, in the fall, we'll be launching a She Recovers Support for female veterans and first responders. Our amazing co-host coordinator, Jen Almos, is going to be leading that initiative with us. And Taryn is developing a She Recovers Support for younger women, a program that will be a group and actually an online program, as well as Zoom calls. And most recently, we just kind of adapt to needs as they're expressed. And quite recently, the need for a group specifically for women who are 60 and older is something that we're pondering. And I turned 60 this year, so I guess that will be a group for me as well. Everybody is always welcome to join us in She Recovers Together and on our twice daily Zoom calls that is for everybody. We're not trying to segment out or silo out people. We're just trying to create some extra support. In real life, remember real life and in person, we've held something like 40 retreats since 2012, in Bali and Mexico, here on the West Coast in California. We had some planned in Maine. We have local sharing circles that are hosted by coaches currently on hold during the pandemic, although some of our coaches are hosting virtual sharing circles and others are meeting in the park. We're looking at revamping our local sharing circle strategy this fall. We've got a recovery book club, so it's called She Recovers Reads. Hiking here in Victoria, we actually walk or hike every Wednesday evening and on Sunday mornings. It's been incredibly popular just this past month or so. People are meeting together informally. We have a Google spreadsheet where people go in and say where they live, and people are connecting that way, or in our Facebook group, and just meeting up for coffees outdoors at this time. Retreats will be back next year, and our big conference, She Recovers in Miami, is still on the books for next May. It was postponed from this past May, and we're just hoping that things start moving in the right direction so that we can get back to that. We're very excited to hold it just at the moment it's safe to do so. We do have coaching programs, so if you are already a coach or a recovery coach or a therapist who is interested in transitioning to coaching, we have programs, and we partner with a coach program so that women can become She Recovers coach through our designation program and other available programs. And there is, oh, sorry, I just realized there is also, Taryn is doing She Recovers, the second She Recovers yoga teacher training, and that will be online in January. If you want to support us, we're always looking for support. We need volunteers. We need people to help us get the word out. We need people to share about our initiatives. Of course, we also need money. There's all sorts of different ways. We are now listed on Amazon Smile. So if you are an Amazon purchaser and you switch over to smile.amazon.com, then you can, a portion of your purchases will come to our foundation. You can also do Facebook birthday fundraisers, which has been amazing for our foundation this past number of months. But really all we ask for you, what we're really looking for in terms of support, is just be a part of our community. You have a story, and there's some other woman in our community or who will join us in our community in the days to come that needs to hear your story, that needs to hear how you recover.
Yeah. Can anyone join the yoga gathering, even with little to no yoga experience? I can answer that one. Absolutely. It is open to all women in recovery. I have every single time there is somebody there who's brand new and never done yoga before. It's all levels welcome, no experience necessary whatsoever. And I even invite you to come to the yoga gathering and not do yoga. If you don't want to do yoga, sometimes we just want to kind of hang out and be in shared space, even if it's online. So you're welcome to join the yoga gathering and just listen. Every gathering, there is a theme. There's readings and quotes that are associated with the theme. So sometimes it's nice just to come and listen and breathe as well. So you're absolutely welcome. Next question. Are you familiar with Charlotte Castle's work and Many Roads, One Journey, Moving Beyond the 12 Steps, 16 Steps to Self-Empowerment? Your work sounds so akin to hers, and I am so thrilled to find you all. I have been looking for you for years. We hear that all the time. We've been looking for each other. And yes, that is a big book that we resource and reference all the time.
I have chills. So, I mean, I am writing my book, and this is like a foundational piece of my recovery, my own recovery. So it's a wonderful book. I mean, and she's wonderful. I mean, I think she's in her 80s now, and she's still kind of doing things. But absolutely, I love her. I also, we actually collaborate with Women for Sobriety. And there are some other amazing women who have kind of taken 12-step recovery kind of either as a launching off point or done some editing of the language, etc. So, but yeah, for sure, Charlotte Castle's work is extremely important and provides a lot of the basis for this whole idea that we have to do things our way. We have to recover in the way that makes sense for us. And it can include, but does not have to include 12-step recovery. Other women heal from. That's the beauty of She Recovers, right? Is we have women who are brand new and needing help in the moment. We have women who are decades into their recovery from whatever it is, food issues, substance use disorders, intimate partner violence, who are just really wanting to give back or to share what's worked for them. And that's what makes our community so beautiful. Kathy Robbins, one of our wonderful coaches from Cape Cod, talks about the stages of change and how we go through all these stages of change when we're in recovery, but one of the most important stages of change that we get to in our recovery is celebration. And that's really what we're trying to evoke with everything that we do, is the idea that not only do you not have to be ashamed of being in recovery, but you should bloody well celebrate it. Like the things that we get to do in recovery and the women that we meet And, you know, the way our lives can unfold, not that life becomes beautiful and nothing bad happens. I've had cancer, I've lost people in my recovery. But overall, my gosh, you know, just being a part of this community is the greatest joy of.
Thank you, Mom, for sharing the heart of She Recovers and who we are and what we've been up to, and the vision and the mission of where we want to go and what we want to co-create with all of you who are present here with us.
Hey, Taryn,